Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's weather update. So, a very large, potent, and impactful nor'easter is currently moving up the east coast. And looking at the 0Z run of the H2R model, heavy rain is currently falling across much of North Carolina, Virginia, through the Delmarva into the northeast. And timing out the next several hours, the rain is only going to get heavier across the northeast as our nor'easter continues to move up the east coast as we're going into midnight tonight Eastern Time, being going to be seeing heavy rain continuing across Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, moving into Pennsylvania, and then as we go into tomorrow morning, heavy rain is going to spread across the northeast. This is about 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow morning, with moderate to heavy rain across Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania. And then as we go through the day tomorrow, moderate to heavy rain is going to overspread the northeast, and we could be seeing some very heavy rain along the coast. And these could be producing some very gusty winds as well with the storms going into around noon tomorrow, actually 2 o'clock tomorrow Eastern Time. Going to continue to see rain move across the northeast, and then rain will continue even into 5 to 6 o'clock, especially across New England, before finally tapering off sometime around midnight Monday night, early Tuesday morning. So this is going to lead to some very heavy rainfall accumulations, looking at an additional 1 to 3 inches across portions of North Carolina and Virginia, across Maryland, Delaware. We're looking at about 2 to 4 inches of rain, eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, southeast New York State, western Massachusetts, Connecticut. This is where the bullseye is going to be, and you're going to be likely seeing as much as 3 to 6 inches of rain, pockets maybe up to 7 inches, so very large flooding concern, especially for New Jersey, even New York City, around Newark, New Jersey, Philadelphia, southeastern New York. Make sure you're preparing for the flood threat. And then looking at the northeast for rainfall accumulations up towards Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, a good 2 to 4 inches with pockets of 6 inches are going to be possible as well, also across portions of southeastern Quebec. So make sure you're preparing for flooding if you live across New England, southeastern Quebec as well. Now, taking a look at our wind gusts, this is also going to be a big story with our storm event. We are currently seeing wind gusts of about 40 to 60 miles per hour along the Outer Banks in far eastern North Carolina, with gusts of 25 to 35 miles per hour further inland. And the winds are going to really ramp up as we go into the overnight across portions of Delaware, New Jersey, Long Island, New York City. Could be gusting to 40 to 50 miles per hour as we go into midnight to 3 a.m. tonight. And then especially as we go into about 7 a.m. tomorrow morning Eastern Time, could be seeing wind gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour in New York City and along Long Island, about 40 to 60 miles per hour across Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. And then as we go into through the morning, this is around noon now Eastern Time, 11 a.m. noon, all across southeastern New England, going to be seeing winds gusting between 50 and 70 miles per hour. Could be seeing hurricane force wind gusts along the coasts around Cape Cod, Nantucket. And then as we go through into the early afternoon, these wind gusts are going to increase across the northeast, going into Maine. Going to be seeing wind gusts of about 40 to 60 miles per hour, with gusts up to 75 miles per hour along the coast. Going into the afternoon, especially Maine, make sure you're paying attention to this wind threat. You're going to be seeing widespread wind gusts of 50 to 70 miles per hour tomorrow afternoon. This is going to be causing some damage, so make sure you're preparing for this wind going into the evening. This is going to be around 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We're going to be seeing winds gusting as high as 75 miles per hour southeastern Maine. And then eventually, as we go into even 9 p.m. tomorrow, still going to be gusting 40 to 60 miles per hour, localized 70 across eastern Maine into western New Brunswick. So make sure you're preparing for a damage and power outages, especially across New England from the storm system. So looking at our excessive flooding rainfall outlook, we have a slight risk across eastern North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, southeast New York State, western Massachusetts, and Connecticut in yellow, including Albany, Hartford, New York City, Trenton, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, Annapolis, Washington, D.C., Dover, Richmond, Norfolk, and Raleigh. Make sure you're preparing for flooding, especially in the slight risk area. Marginal risk through Greensboro, the eastern Appalachian Mountains, the southern Adirondack Mountains into portions of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and western Rhode Island. And then going into tomorrow, our slight risk moves into portions of Maine, New Hampshire, southeast Vermont, western New Hampshire, or western Massachusetts, with our marginal risk moving into Connecticut, Rhode Island, most of Massachusetts, eastern New York State, most of Vermont, northern and far southern New Hampshire, northern Maine. So make sure you're preparing for flooding tomorrow, especially if you live from Concord through Augusta, Maine. And finally, looking at our current radar, just a big area, a big slug of rain moving up the East Coast, all the way from South Carolina, North Carolina, through New England in the Northeast. Looking at the last several hours, this rain shield is slowly moving up, actually quickly moving up the shore over the last 4 hours as our nor'easter continues to move to the northeast, and heavy rain is now moving across Washington, D.C. to portions of Pennsylvania, Virginia, and even up towards Boston, seeing some heavy rain bands. And this is just going to continue to move to the northeast as we go through the evening overnight hours. Looking at some of our watches, warnings, and advisories, looking at our severe weather first, we have a tornado watch in effect until 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for southeastern North Carolina. So make sure you have your tornado preparations plans in place if you live across eastern North Carolina. A severe thunderstorm warning around Jacksonville until 9:15 Eastern Standard Time for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But our main alerts are going to be flooding alerts. Got flash flood warnings around Goldsboro, Clinton, North Carolina. Widespread flood advisories around Raleigh into south central Virginia around Richmond, along the coast in Jacksonville. Then we got flood watches. So I'm going to take off the reflectivity to show you the flood watches. Flood watches across much of the eastern half of North Carolina, eastern Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, eastern Pennsylvania, much of New Jersey, much of New York State, into Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. Widespread flooding event is going to be possible, so make sure you're really preparing for the flooding up and down the East Coast. And then finally looking at some of our wind alerts. We have wind advisories across the Appalachian Mountains, portions of Maryland, coastal Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, coastal New Jersey, portions of most of Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, much of Maine. Then we have wind warnings across most of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. And then looking at some of our bigger, more intense wind warnings, we have high wind warnings across Boston, Rhode Island, southeastern Connecticut, and much of southeastern Maine, including Bangor, Augusta, Portland. And this is stating we could be seeing winds as high as 60 miles per hour in these areas. So wind damage is definitely going to be a concern, especially in Maine, where winds could be gusting to 70 miles per hour along the coast. So thanks for watching this evening's update on our very powerful, impactful nor'easter. Make sure you're preparing for flooding, damaging winds, and even storm surge along the coast over the next several hours if you live across the Northeast. Thanks for watching this evening's weather update. Please stay safe and have a wonderful evening, my friends.